The iron staff strikes the temple with a sound that will echo through Russian history for 4 centuries. A father's weapon against his son's skull. The beginning of the end of the Rurik dynasty. The 16th of November, 1581. Approximately 9:47 inches the evening. The private chambers of Ivan Ivanovich in Moscow's Alexandrovsky Palace stand silent, except for the labored breathing of 2 men. Candles flicker in iron sconces mounted along stone walls thick enough to muffle screams. These walls, adorned with frescoes depicting saints and martyrs, now witness a martyrdom of a different kind. A single window overlooks the frozen Moskva River below, where ice has begun its annual conquest of flowing water. Blood pools on white marble flooring, spreading in dark rivulets toward intricate Persian carpets, worth more than most Russian villages. In the corner, his pregnant wife Yelena lies collapsed, her silk gown torn at the shoulder where the Tsar struck her moments before. The copper tang of fresh blood mingles with beeswax candles and winter air seeping through cracks in the ancient palace windows. Despite the roaring fireplace, cold permeates everything, the kind of cold that comes from within rather than without. The iron-tipped staff clatters against stone as it falls from trembling hands. The bells of Kremlin churches toll the evening hour, their rhythm marking time that has suddenly become meaningless. Between the bells, there is only ragged breathing. Heavy silence follows violence the way silence follows thunder. A father stands over his dying son. The heir to Russia's throne gasps for breath that will not come. One moment of rage has just destroyed a dynasty. Ivan IV, Ivan the Terrible, Tsar of all Russia, is on his knees now, cradling the head he just fractured. His lips move with words that seem pulled from some deep well of horror. "I've killed my son. I've killed my son." The voice wavers between realization and denial, between what is and what cannot possibly be. To understand how we arrived at this moment, how an empire's future died on cold marble, we must step back. Russia in 1581 exists at a crossroads between medieval principality and modern empire. For 51 years, Ivan IV has ruled with a brilliance matched only by his brutality. He transformed a collection of feudal territories into a centralized state. He conquered Kazan and Astrakhan, expanding Russian territory to the Caspian Sea. He created Russia's first standing army, reformed the legal code, and established trade with England. But brilliance and madness often share the same throne. The Oprichnina Ivan's personal secret police force, created in 1565, terrorized the nobility for 7 years, crushing any hint of dissent with torture, execution, and confiscation. The Livonian War, begun in 1558 with dreams of Baltic conquest, has instead become a 23-year nightmare draining Russia's treasury and population. Paranoia grips the court. Ivan's second wife died mysteriously in 1569, fueling rumors of poison. His third wife died in 1570. His fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh wives either died or were sent to convents. The Tsar's mental state deteriorates with each passing year. Religious mania alternates with violent outbursts. He has killed numerous boyars with his own hands, often with that same iron-tipped walking staff now lying bloodied on the floor. Court physicians document what they carefully call melancholic episodes. What they mean is madness. Ivan Ivanovich, 27 years old, represents everything his father once was, before paranoia consumed him. Intelligent, capable, an effective military commander. He has fought in the Livonian War and understands its brutal reality better than the aging Tsar who sends orders from Moscow. The Tsarevich has married 3 times his third wife. Yelena Sheremetova is 6 months pregnant with what could have been Russia's future. The fatal confrontation began 90 seconds earlier. Ivan IV stormed into his son's chambers unannounced, his face flushed with a fury that courtiers have learned to fear. What he discovered there ignited something that had been smoldering for days. Yelena wore what the Tsar considered improper clothing, a single undergarment instead of the 3 layers Orthodox tradition demands for a woman of her station. For Ivan, this was not mere immodesty. It was defiance. It was Western corruption. It was evidence of conspiracy. The Tsar's hand moved before thought could intervene. The blow sent Yelena stumbling backward, striking the wall with force that would later cost her the child she carried. Ivan Ivanovich did what any husband would do. He rushed to defend his pregnant wife, positioning himself between her and his father's rage. "You dare raise your hand to a woman carrying the future of Russia?" he demanded, his voice sharp with disbelief. But this confrontation was not really about clothing or propriety. Those were merely the spark. The real fuel had been accumulating for 3 days, since November 13, since the War Council in the Kremlin's Granovitaya Palace. That afternoon, maps of the Livonian front had spread across oak tables, scarred by decades of military planning. Russian forces were losing badly. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth pushed deeper into Russian territory with each passing week. Supply lines collapsed. Soldiers deserted in unprecedented numbers. The treasury stood empty, unable to pay for another campaign season. Ivan IV, surrounded by nervous generals, proposed another winter offensive. His son, recently returned from the front with frost-scarred hands and first-hand knowledge of the army's condition, spoke words that sealed his fate. "Father, father, 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 our soldiers freeze in summer clothes. We need peace negotiations, not another offensive that will kill thousands for nothing." The room fell into the kind of silence that precedes catastrophe. No one suggests that the Tsar, the brilliant strategist who conquered Kazan, might be wrong. The Tsarevich had committed an unforgivable sin. He spoke truth before the court, revealing weakness, suggesting failure. Ivan's response came cold and measured. "We will discuss this later, my son." But everyone present noticed his knuckles whitening as he gripped the table edge. They noticed the slight tremor in his voice. They noticed and they understood. Foreign Office dispatches from England would later reference this meeting. Polish chronicles would speak of dissension between the Tsar and his heir. For 3 days, Ivan brooded. He spent November 14 and 15 inches prayer at the Cathedral of the Archangel, prostrating himself before the tombs of his ancestors, the long line of Moscow princes who built what he now ruled. He fasted completely, drinking only water mixed with ashes in penitential ritual. Cathedral records note his extended vigil. His physician, Dr. Aloysius Bomelius, documented in his medical journal the Tsar's increasing melancholic madness. Courtiers reported hearing him argue with invisible enemies in his private chapel. He ordered the torture of 2 boyars who allegedly laughed during the War Council, though no one else heard laughter. Bogdan Belsky, one of Ivan's trusted oprichniks, observed the Tsar muttering about betrayal from within my own blood. The smell of incense and unwashed flesh filled the cathedral. Ivan's self-imposed penance created a stench of suffering that drove even priests from the sanctuary. By November 16, Ivan had convinced himself of a terrible conclusion. His own son conspired against him. The military advice was not honest counsel, but calculated undermining. The Tsarevich sided with boyars who wished to see Ivan overthrown. Every word spoken 3 days earlier now appeared in a different light, filtered through paranoia's distorting lens. When Ivan struck Yelena in the chamber that evening, he was not simply punishing improper dress. He was striking at what he believed was foreign corruption poisoning his son's loyalty. When the Tsarevich defended his wife, Ivan heard confirmation of his worst fears. "You dare raise your hand to a woman carrying the future of Russia?" The Tsar's response cut like a blade. "Reason? You speak of reason after conspiring with the boyars against your Tsar." Well, the Tsarevich's confusion was genuine. His face showed complete incomprehension. "I've conspired against no one. I spoke military truth at the council. You humiliated me before the court." Ivan's voice rose to a shriek that echoed off stone walls and frescoed ceilings. "You sided with my enemies. You questioned my judgment in front of foreign ambassadors and weak-willed generals. Father, I questioned a strategy that will kill our soldiers for no gain." But Ivan was beyond hearing. His mind had already transformed his son into an enemy, had already convicted him of treason. In a court where paranoia served as judge and executioner, the Tsarevich made his fatal error in that moment. He looked at his father at the wild eyes, the trembling hands, the foam at the corners of the mouth, and said words that could not be unsaid. "Father, you see enemies where there are none. Your mind." The moment froze. The world held its breath. Ivan Ivanovich had suggested his father was mad. Antonio Passavino, the papal legate who would arrive in Moscow weeks later, would document this in his report to Pope Gregory XIII. The son challenged the father's mental faculty words that sealed his fate more certainly than any act of treason could have done. Ivan IV's hand reached for his iron-tipped walking staff, the same staff he used to crush the skulls of boyars who displeased him, the same staff he carried through palace corridors as a reminder of his power. 3 pounds of wood and iron, extended like an executioner's blade. His own son had just become one more enemy requiring elimination. The staff swings upward in an arc that seems to move in slow motion, as if time itself hesitates before this irrevocable act. 3 pounds of iron-tipped wood connects with the right temple of Ivan Ivanovich with sickening force. The sound is not dramatic. It is dull, almost mundane, the sound of metal meeting bone, of father murdering son, of a dynasty ending. His hand rises defensively, an instinct that cannot save him now. The second strike comes before comprehension can fully form. This one finds the crown of the skull, and blood sprays across the frescoed wall, depicting the Nativity Christ's birth, now spattered with a different kind of sacrifice. The Tsarevich collapses onto white marble that has witnessed centuries of royal feet, but never this. Never blood from the heir's own head, spreading in obscene patterns toward images of saints who seem to watch in silent judgment. Ivan IV raises the staff for a third strike. His arms tremble with the weapon held above his head, poised to deliver another blow to the son who lies motionless below. But something breaks through the rage. Recognition floods the Tsar's face like cold water, shocking a dreamer awake. The staff trembles in his raised hands. His son lies on the floor, blood pooling beneath his head, eyes half open but unseeing. The bells of the Kremlin continue their evening toll, indifferent to the catastrophe unfolding in the palace chamber. The staff falls. Not thrown, not dropped in violence, but released as if Ivan's fingers have forgotten their purpose. It clatters against stone, the sound impossibly loud in the sudden silence. Yelena's screams from the corner seem to come from very far away. The Tsar drops to his knees, his royal robes spreading around him like a collapsing tent. He gathers his son's bleeding head into his lap, and the words that emerge sound torn from some place beyond reason. "I've killed my son. I've killed my son. I've killed my son." Boris Godunov and palace guards arrive within minutes, summoned by Yelena's screams that echo through corridors designed to muffle sound. They find a scene that will haunt Russian history for centuries. The Tsar covered in his son's blood, rocking back and forth, cradling the Tsarevich like a mother with an infant. The iron staff lying discarded, blood spreading across white marble in patterns that map the end of the Rurik dynasty. Dr. Johann Eilof arrives with his medical instruments and pharmaceutical supplies. But even as he kneels beside the fallen Tsarevich, his face betrays what he knows. The skull fracture is catastrophic, the swelling visible even through hair matted with blood, the breathing shallow and irregular. Ivan Ivanovich's eyes flutter open for brief moments, consciousness surfacing and drowning in turns. When his lips move, blood pools in his mouth, preventing speech. Whatever final words he might have spoken remain trapped behind broken bone and torn flesh. Yelena suffers a miscarriage on the chamber floor, the shock and the earlier blow combining to take the child who might have been Russia's future. 2 deaths in one room, 2 futures erased. The Tsarevich who could have saved Russia from the chaos to come, and the grandchild who might have continued the line. Palace servants who arrive to assist whisper that the very air in the chamber feels cursed, that God has abandoned this place where father struck son. Ivan refuses to release his son's body. For hours, he clutches the Tsarevich, blood soaking through imperial robes worth more than most nobles possess in a lifetime. Witnesses, and there are many now. As word spreads through the palace, like fire, through dry timber, describe the Tsar's face as transformed by grief into something inhuman. The eyes that held such certainty moments before now show only devastation. The hands that wielded the staff with deadly precision now tremble uselessly, unable to stop the bleeding no matter how much pressure they apply. If you're drawn to documented records of history's most devastating family tragedies, the moments when personal violence became political catastrophe, subscribe to Epoch Ensemble. We uncover accounts hidden in palace archives, sealed in Vatican vaults, buried in histories written by victors who wanted these truths forgotten. Now, back to November 1581, where Russia's future slips away with each labored breath. For 4 days, Ivan Ivanovich clings to life. 4 days during which the Tsar refuses to leave his son's bedside, neither eating nor sleeping. The Tsarevich develops a severe fever as infection spreads from the skull fracture. In an era before antibiotics, before modern medicine, such wounds mean death. The only question is how long suffering will last before mercy arrives. Ivan IV offers his entire treasury to doctors who can save his heir. 15,000 rubles, enough to fund military campaigns, enough to build cathedrals, means nothing if it cannot reverse 3 seconds of rage. Religious relics are brought from across Russia at the Tsar's command. Pieces of the true cross from Constantinople, saints' bones from monasteries hundreds of miles away, miracle-working icons carried by monks who travel day and night. Ivan promises God anything: his throne, his remaining years, his immortal soul. Take me instead, the Tsar prays. Take me and spare him. But prayer cannot mend shattered bone. Relics cannot reverse infection spreading through the Tsarevich's brain. On November 19, at 3:17 inches the morning, Ivan Ivanovich dies without regaining full consciousness. Priests present at the moment record his final semi-conscious words: Father, nothing more. Whether accusation or forgiveness, no one can say. The death registry at the Cathedral of the Archangel will list his death at the 4th hour after midnight, the 19th of November, 1581. Funeral expenses documented in treasury records: 15,000 rubles, the same amount offered uselessly to doctors. The heir is dead. Russia's future now rests with Fyodor, Ivan's surviving son, a man contemporary accounts describe as mentally incompetent, deeply pious, but incapable of ruling an empire. Fyodor, who prefers church bells to council meetings, who cannot make decisions without boyars guiding him like a child. This is Russia's next Tsar, a vacancy on the throne while wearing the crown. Ivan IV's breakdown is total and immediate. He orders the creation of a memorial book listing his son's name and demanding prayers in every church across Russia. He donates 5,000 rubles to monasteries, specifically for prayers for the soul of Tsarevich Ivan, murdered by his father. Not killed by accident, not died of illness, murdered by his father. The Tsar insists on this wording, as if confession might provide absolution, as if naming the sin might erase it. He tears out clumps of his own hair and beard in public displays of grief that terrify courtiers who remember this man once inspired such fear that entire cities surrendered rather than face his wrath. Now he wanders palace corridors at night, screaming throughout the darkness, "God's punishment! I've murdered Russia!" Servants report finding him prostrate before icons, beating his head against stone floors until blood runs. He refuses to wear imperial regalia, dressing instead in a penitent's sackcloth that reeks of unwashed grief. He drafts abdication letters and burns them, writes them again, burns them again. Cannot decide whether staying on the throne or abandoning it represents greater sin. His remaining son Fyodor, weak, simple, incapable, becomes heir to an empire that will soon need strength Russia no longer possesses. The Tsar who terrorized boyars for decades, who made grown men tremble with a glance, has become something else entirely, a broken father who destroyed what he loved most. But even as Ivan drowns in guilt, others begin calculating. Boris Godunov, brother-in-law to the incompetent Fyodor, recognizes opportunity emerging from tragedy. The boyars sense weakness after decades of terror. Rumors spread through Moscow that Ivan will abdicate or enter a monastery. Foreign ambassadors send urgent dispatches. Russia's succession is in chaos. The Livonian War, already failing, collapses completely. Peace negotiations begin from positions of devastating weakness. Yelena Sheremetova, the Tsarevich's widow who lost both husband and child in a single night, is sent to a convent. She will live another 40 years in isolation, never remarrying, never speaking publicly of the 16th of November 1581. History will nearly forget her name, though she was perhaps the night's greatest victim, the woman who endured violence, lost her child, and watched her husband die from her father-in-law's rage. Ivan IV attempts to continue ruling, but courtiers document what they carefully call fits of madness, where the Tsar believes his son still lives. He orders meals prepared for the Tsarevich. He calls for Ivan Ivanovich during council meetings, then realizes mid-sentence that his heir lies buried in the cathedral. The man who once held absolute power now cannot trust his own mind, cannot distinguish memory from present, cannot escape the sound of iron striking bone. 3 years later, in 1584, Ivan the Terrible dies. Some say of stroke, others whisper poison, though who would dare poison the Tsar remains unclear. Perhaps his body simply surrendered to guilt that his mind could not process. Fyodor I becomes Tsar, ruling only in name, while Boris Godunov consolidates actual power. In 1598, when Fyodor dies childless, the Rurik dynasty ends. 7 centuries of rule concluded because a father could not control his rage for 3 seconds. What follows is called the Time of Troubles. 15 years of civil war, famine, foreign invasion, and anarchy from 1598 to 1613. An estimated 1/3 of Russia's population dies from starvation and violence. Polish armies occupy Moscow. False Dimitris, claiming to be Ivan's other dead son, appear and disappear. The state nearly collapses entirely, all traceable to that November night when 3 strikes of an iron staff killed more than 1 man. In 1963, Soviet archaeologists conducting restoration work at the Cathedral of the Archangel exhumed Ivan Ivanovich's remains for forensic analysis. Dr. Mikhail Gerasimov, leading Soviet forensic anthropologist, directed the examination. The skull showed unmistakable catastrophic fracture to the right temporal bone, exactly consistent with historical accounts. 3 distinct impact points, bone fragments revealing the trajectory of blows from someone taller striking downward. Mercury levels in hair samples were extremely elevated, suggesting possible earlier poisoning attempts that failed before the staff succeeded. The documentary evidence had always existed. Jerome Horsey's eyewitness accounts, Antonio Passavino's Vatican letters, sent within weeks to Pope Gregory XIII, Boris Godunov's testament confirming he witnessed the fatal blow, Kremlin financial ledgers showing unusual expenditures for physicians, funeral arrangements, penitential offerings, but forensic science in 1963 provided what documents alone could not: physical proof that the horror actually occurred exactly as described. 3 seconds of rage erased 3 centuries of dynasty. A father's hand destroyed what generations built and what future generations needed. In the Cathedral of the Archangel, beneath golden domes and eternal candles, Tsarevich Ivan Ivanovich rests beside his father. Their monuments stand side by side, victim and murderer, unified in death as they never could be in life. In their silence, they still speak. They speak of power without restraint, of tyranny, consuming even what it loves most. They speak of how personal tragedy becomes national catastrophe, how one man's madness can destroy millions. They speak of the fatal cost, when absolute authority faces no check, no balance, no consequence until the irreversible moment arrives. And they speak of the 16th of November 1581, when the sound of iron striking bone echoed forward through centuries, reminding us that some screams never fade. This is Epoch Ensemble, where we uncover the buried truths that shaped our world. Subscribe to journey deeper into history's darkest corners, where personal violence became political destiny, where the powerful destroyed themselves, where empires fell because fathers murdered sons. The past is not dead. It is not even past. It walks the halls of the Kremlin on cold November nights, eternally repeating what can never be undone.